most highly favored maiden, Gloria. Do you know this Christmas hymn? It's number 265 in our Episcopal hymnal 1982. Our choir will sing it for us at the offertory. It's actually a Basque folk carol inspired by a 13th or 14th century Latin carol. But I had never heard it actually in the tradition I grew up in until Sting recorded it in 1987. The Annunciation, Gabriel's coming to Mary and her response, let it be. In the hymn, it goes, the angel Gabriel from heaven came, his wings as drifted snow, his eyes as flame. All hail, said he, thou lowly maiden Mary, most highly favored lady, Gloria. Lowly maiden and highly favored lady, highly favored. And there it is. The professor of preaching, Caroline Lewis, said, it is no small thing to be regarded, to be favored, especially when you are exceedingly aware that you should not be. Because Mary asks, right? How can this be? Not demurring, but perplexed. Who, me? How? God has noticed her, lowly maiden that she is. You know what it's like to be noticed. It changes things. From something as simple as, hey, you got a haircut, it looks nice, to being voted captain of your team. From being asked to dance, to having someone ask you if you're okay when you're feeling down. I remember being in 4th grade in my little Catholic elementary school, Holy Trinity, and I had a classmate, I'll call her Helen, who was one of the kids most did not pay attention to or be nice to, and some were downright awful to her. She was pale and shy and a little different, and she had messy hair and big glasses and a squeaky, soft voice. I always felt so sad for her. I hope that I was at least decent to her, because I remember wanting to be. Well, the 4th grade at Holy Trinity always put on a Christmas play at the big assembly, and it was a big deal for all of us once we got to 4th grade. And this year, the main character was a little girl. And oh my goodness, we were all a Twitter. Who would get the lead part? And well, as you're probably already surmising, the teacher cast Helen in the lead part of the play. And Helen was flabbergasted. Who, me? Could she bring her very quiet, shy self to center stage? It was a lot to ask. I wonder if anyone had ever chosen her for something special in her whole life. But Helen got the highly favored role, with the bright costume and the multiple lines to say, and everyone to work directly with her and to fuss over her and to compliment her. And I was so happy that the teacher had chosen Helen, that Helen got lifted up. I can still hear in my head the lilt of how she said her lines in that play all these years later. That's what I remember. When the lowly are lifted up, it is breathtaking. But what should not be breathtaking is that the lowly are fully capable of stepping up to what they're lifted up to do when they're given the chance. That's what Jesus comes to do, right? But first, Mary had to do it. She is called highly favored and asked to do something amazing, something hard, something seemingly impossible, something amazing. Who, me? How? Mary is unmarried, she's unresourced, she's unremarkable. She knows it. And the stakes are frighteningly high. So heck yes, she was perplexed. I was tempted to go down a rabbit hole to see where the original I could find of perplexed comes from, because I'm thinking that's probably a very mild word for what Mary was. How can this be? Has a lot of who, me in it, right? The angel's words in the Gospels of greetings, favored one, bear not just the pat on the back of being lauded for getting the part, but the flip side of what does that mean? Who, me? Yes, you. Mary had the choice and had to say yes. But of course, God knew that this lowly maiden would say yes. God knew she had it in her to do this thing. So I stand here this morning and say, yes, you, to myself, and to each of you too, because we are each noticed and favored by the God who loves us. And so we are each asked to do and to bear the seemingly impossible sometimes in our lives, things we somehow do by the grace of God. And I will tell you, by do and by grace, I don't mean we get by unscathed. Mary herself was not unscathed, right? God knows. The Mary who says, all generations shall call me blessed, has the devout Simeon at the temple tell her, while Jesus is still a baby, that her own soul will be pierced. And 30 years later, she sits at the foot of the cross, receiving in the arms that had cradled him the dead body of her beloved Son. Most highly favored lady. At the Annunciation, there is the unplumbed magnitude of what is asked, and Mary can sense that. She can't know the extent, but she knows this is going to be some journey. She is perplexed, the gospel says. We can only imagine. And yet, the angel says, do not be afraid. And so her answer is, here am I, the servant of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to thy word. And here we stand now on the cusp of Christmas, where Mary is holding Jesus, as tiny and helpless as any human being ever born, a soft face against a mother's cheek, looking at the world with no idea what's to come. But that is how God chose to be with us. That lowly, lovable vulnerability, full of promise, is what the most highly favored God's self looks like. The coming of Christmas, it really is in so many ways the fulcrum of history. Human history and salvation history. Culture still obsesses over it and celebrates it and commercializes it and treasures it. Faith still kneels and trembles before it, filled with wonder and hope. And we are here with our faith, coming to the close of our season of waiting, ready for Jesus to be in our favored arms this very night. In a season of such immense difficulties in the world, and with grief and losses in our own lives, we see, like Mary did, the joy and promise in that baby. Like we always do when we see a baby. We can't help it. Such joy and such promise. God knows firsthand, and we surely know, that to be human is to be vulnerable, to experience good things and hard things. But in the midst of this messy, extravagant, wonderful human life journey that we're on, can we recognize that our very being means that we are God's favored? It's not favors that show God's favor. It's God with us. Because what is the greatest sign of being favored that anyone can give you? Isn't it their wanting to be with you? Isn't that what deep friendship is, what loving partnership is? I want to be with you. And the response that fills the heart. And I want to be with you too. That's what we long for. And so we say to God, like Mary did, here I am. The holy God who loves us, from whose love nothing can separate us, is coming into the world in our own flesh, born of a woman, born of Mary to be with us. That is the amazing extent of this love, this promise. How favored are we? Gloria